Hi, Mrs. C here. Welcome to Math Defined. Today I'm going to show you how to multiply fractions using cancellation. So when you are multiplying a pair of fractions, there are 4 easy steps to follow. Step 1 is looking for cross cancellation if it's possible. So I have a pair of fractions below, 3/4 times 5/6, and I'm going to check to see, can I cross cancel anywhere in this problem? Now, cross-canceling involves looking at a diagonal numerator and a denominator and determining whether or not they share a common factor. And if they do share a common factor, then we're going to divide each numerator and denominator by that common shared factor, which in essence is reducing our fraction or simplifying our fractions before we multiply. So let me take a step back again. So again, we're going to look at a diagonal numerator and denominator, such as 3 and 6. They're diagonal from each other. 3 is a numerator, 6 is a denominator. And I'm going to ask myself, do 3 and 6 share any common factors? And they do. They share a 3. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the numerator of 3 and the denominator of 6 with that factor of 3. And I'm going to cancel out what I have now and replace it with a smaller number. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So I canceled out my 3 and replaced it with a 1, and then I canceled out my 6 and replaced that with a 2. Now I'm going to look at my other diagonal numerator and denominator of 5 and 4, and I can see that they don't share any common factors at all. So I can't cancel the 5 or the 4 in this one. So now I'm going to go to step 2. Step 2 is to multiply the numerators. Now I need to be careful here because remember I told you that I canceled out the numerator of 3 and the denominator of 6. So when I go to multiply my numerators, I'm not going to multiply 3 times 5. I'm going to use that replacement number of 1, and I'm going to multiply that by 1 times 5. So 1 times 5 is going to give me a numerator of 5. And then I need to multiply the denominators, and again I need to remember that I replaced that original denominator, I canceled it, and I replaced it with a value of 2. So now I'm going to multiply 4 times 2, and 4 times 2 is 8. Now my last step is just to make sure that my fraction is in simplest form. And I know it's in simplest form when the numerator and the denominator, they don't share any common factors other than 1. And in this case, we are in simplest form, so I'm done. So basically what cross-cancel does, it allows you to replace larger numbers with smaller numbers by canceling with a common factor, and then it just makes those numbers easier to work with and allowing you to make fewer mistakes. So let's practice a few. So here are our steps again: cross-cancel if possible, then multiply the numerators, then multiply the denominators, and then just make sure that you check to make sure your answer is in simplest form. So we're going to have a pair of fractions, 2/5 times 5/7. Then we're going to practice with 4/7 times 2/5. And then we're going to practice with 2/9 times 3/4. And I encourage you right now to pause your video and complete all 3 of these problems right now using cross-cancellation, and then come back to the video and see if you were correct. And you want to make sure you stay until the end of the video because we're going to do a bonus problem after we complete these 3 where we're going to multiply 3 fractions together using cancellation. So you won't want to miss that. All right, so let's get started with 2/5 times 5/7. So step number 1 says to cross-cancel if possible. So I'm going to look diagonally at 2 and 7, and I can see that they do not share any common factors. Now I'm going to look at the 5 in the numerator and that 5 in the denominator, and I see that they do share a common factor of 5. So now I'm going to divide by 5. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, so I've canceled out that 5 and replaced it with a 1. And then I'm going to do the denominator. 5 divided by 5 is also 1, so I've canceled out that denominator and I've made it a 1. So now I am ready to multiply my numerators. So be careful, my numerators are not 2 and 5 anymore because I canceled out that 5, replaced it with a smaller number of 1. So 2 times 1 is 2. Same for the denominator. Remember, I canceled out that 5, so it's not 5 times 7, it's 1 times 7, and 1 times 7 is 7. And again, I'm going to check to see if my answer is in simplest form, and it is, so I'm going to go ahead and circle it, and I'm done. All right, let's look at 4 sevenths times 2 fifths. And again, I'm going to go ahead and check for cross-canceling. So 5 and 4 do not share any common factors, so I can't cancel those two numbers out. Then I look at 2 and 7, and they also don't share any common factors other than 1. So in this particular problem, I can't cancel anything. And that's okay. Just because we know how to use cross-canceling, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be an option and be available for you to use. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and multiply my numerators. 4 times 2 gives me 8. Then I'm going to multiply my denominators. 7 times 5 is 35. And then I'm going to really check and make sure, do 8 and 35, do they share any common factors? And the answer to that is no, so I know it's in simplest form. All right, let's look at one more. So we have 2 ninths times 3 fourths. So again, we're going to check for that cross-canceling with 2 and 4. And I do see that they share a common factor of 2, so let's go ahead and divide by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I was able to cancel out that 2 and that 4 and replace it with smaller numbers. Then I'm going to look at 3 and 9, and I see that they also share a common factor of 3 this time. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So in this problem, I was able to basically cancel out all my numerators and denominators and replace them with smaller numbers. And it only worked out because those diagonal numerators and denominators shared a common factor, and that's what allowed me to basically simplify my fractions before I started multiplying. So now I'm going to multiply my numerators. 1 times 1 is 1. Multiply my denominators. 3 times 2 is 6. And I know that 1/6 is in simplest form because they don't share any common factors other than 1. So now, as promised, our bonus problem. So we are going to multiply 3 fractions together this time instead of 2. So we have 1/2 times 3 fifths times 4 ninths. So I'm going to check to see if I can cross cancel. And I want to take just a second, a pause here. Can you find a diagonal numerator and denominator that we could use cross cancellation with? And I'm hoping you did. I hope you saw 3 and 9. So 3 and 9 share a common factor of 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. All right, there is another diagonal numerator and denominator that I can cross cancel with. Can you find it? Here it is, my 4 and 2. So 4 and 2 share a common factor of 2. So you might be thinking, wait a minute, how come you went from that 4, the last fraction, and then you went to the 2, the denominator that was the first fraction, and you kind of skipped over that middle fraction? That's perfectly fine to do that. The reason is I'm looking for diagonal numerators and denominators. So since 4 and 2 are diagonal to each other, it's perfectly okay that they're not sitting right next to each other. They're still in the same problem, they're all being multiplied together, and they're diagonal. So let's go ahead and divide by that common factor of 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. And I've been able to take some of my larger numbers and cancel them by factoring out a common factor, which means dividing by a common factor, and making my numbers smaller and easier to work with. So let's go ahead and rewrite our numerators and denominators because it gets a little messy sometimes when you have a lot of fractions together. So my numerators are 1 times 1 times 2, and my denominators are 1 times 5 times 3. So now I'm going to look at multiply my numerators. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. Then I multiply the denominators. 1 times 5 is 5, and 5 times 3 is 15. And I know my answer is in simplest form because 2 and 15 do not share any common factors other than 1. If you like this video, let me know by clicking the like button, leaving me a comment, and becoming a subscriber today. Until I see you next time, thanks for watching.